Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Squires, the Nurturing Coach, and today we're going to look at how the narcissist induces symptoms of rejecting the targeted parent in parental alienation. So narcissistic parents follow a pattern of behaviours to recruit their children to align with them against the other parent. And in this second video, we're going to look at how they induce those symptoms for the child to independently reject the targeted parent. So last time we looked at how they establish the role reversal relationship, and this is all about the symptoms. So once they've got that role reversal relationship, and what we mean by that is the child picks up on the emotions of the parent and adapts to stop them from dysregulating. So if the parent is feeling anxious, it will be the child that attempts to soothe that. Whereas in normal healthy parent-child relationship, it's the parent who spots that the child is feeling anxious and seeks to soothe it, hence why it's called that role reversal. But what they do from there is they induce the victimised child role. They then play into a trauma reenactment narrative. This traps the targeted parent. The child is able to elicit criticism, and the parent elicits that criticism out of the child and uses secondary communication dynamics to enhance that, to bring the child to the point where they will choose to reject that parent. And then they show it off, basically. They use parental emotional signalling to ensure that the child knows exactly what they want them to say, how they want them to behave. And this also involves attuned and misattuned parental responses, ultimately so that the alienating parent can hide behind the child. Because if the alienating parent was to overtly do all of these behaviours, so to tell the child you must reject your other parent, the child would naturally go against that. That's not what a child does. They never knowingly and willingly reject a parent. So they have to go about it covertly, and this is the process that we take. So we're going to explore all of those in a little bit more detail. So the victimised child role. So once role reversal relationship has been established, the narcissistic parenting personality disorder parent or the borderline personality disorder parent will induce the victimised child role. They present you as the abusive parent, which therefore means that the child has to be a victim. And of course, that leaves the role open for them to be the protector. This is also known as the drama triangle in psychology and psychotherapy terms. But what happens from this is the child will independently reject the targeted parent, which allows the alienating parent to hide behind that child and what they are saying and doing. So the trauma reenactment narrative is a pattern of behaviour repeated throughout the alienated parent's life and triggered by the separation. This leads to that trauma reenactment of those three roles: the abuser, the victim, and the protector. Obviously, as I've just stated, once you have been assigned the role of abuser, everyone slots in. But the first part is to get the child to play that victim role, because that is the most powerful within this. Once the child is a victim, there has to be an abuser and a protector. And obviously, the alienating parent neatly tries to slot themselves into the protector role. This then traps the targeted parent. You have no choice but to try and disprove that you are abusive, but who keeps evidence of all the times that they weren't abusive? It's just, you're not abusive. You don't evidence that you're not abusive. You're just not. And so it's a double bind for a parent to try and prove that. What then sometimes happens is you try and prove that the other parent is abusive by using the term parental alienation. And that can backfire because there's such a lot of negative rhetoric around parental alienation as being used by abusers. And so I would be very wary of using that term. Instead, we want to be looking at the patterns of behaviour that they exhibit. So how do they elicit that criticism and encourage the child to reject you? Well, for example, a child will come home, the alienating parent would ask, did you have a good time, for example? Child responds with, yeah, it was good, thank you. The alienating parent will, right, okay, and turn away. So withdrawing their attention and affection. So the child who has been coerced into being the regulatory other recognizes, oh my God, they're not happy, what can I do? And so they will say anything and everything to try and get their attention back. So they might say, well, they did actually have a go at me about so and so, at which point they regain the alienating parent's attention, who is avidly listening. So they learn and are conditioned to criticize. Those criticisms get the child's need met. The bigger the criticism, the bigger the reward. Secondary communication dynamics are where these criticisms follow a theme. This is the narrative that the alienating parent is trying to create. So the child might offer a small criticism. Maybe you're a bit mardy or something. It might be true, it might not be, but it's their interpretation. So they offer that criticism. The alienating parent will then completely exaggerate that claim by saying, oh, they were always so grumpy and miserable and they made me feel so uncomfortable. Oh, you poor thing. Again, the child then will agree with that because they know as their role as the person who is managing the narcissist or the borderline's emotion, that that's what's needed from them. They need to agree, and they therefore understand that there's a theme here. The theme is that the parent is grumpy and controlling and always in a bad mood, and then they can exaggerate each one of those. So they then manage that guilt, because the child does not feel good in doing this, because even though they are slowly and insidiously being manipulated through this, they still have those fond memories of you and they still want that relationship with you. And so they do feel guilty if they criticize you. So how do they manage that? Well, they turn all the anger on you and they blame you, because they've been established as being the victim, you've been established as the abuser, so it makes logical sense for them to be, well, if I'm feeling like this, it must be your fault. So that's how the child internally manages that guilt. They then have to manage the truth, which is a bit more difficult, because again, they do have those memories, but what the alienating parent does is, by allowing the child to lead the criticism process, the child gains relief from any anxiety on that, and it makes them feel better. So when they criticize, they feel a bit better. They don't have to make stuff up. They don't have to feel the guilt, because it's been established that this is the right thing for them to do. And so truth becomes distorted, and that's how allegations can easily get made up, because actually it provides them with some relief because they get their needs met by the alienating parent.